Sajjid, could GST tinkering be one small thing that can be done? I believe, I mean, at least the belief was until Operation Sindoor happened and then the large defense capex was announced that there was some fiscal headroom to announce a small fiscal push. Maybe that is done away with because of the capex plans around defense. But I'm just wondering, could GST be an answer, GST tinkering of rates in select categories which need a push, or would you recommend something else the government to do to help boost consumption?
So I think there are two questions here. The broader question is, does fiscal policy have space? And I would argue at this point, it likely doesn't. I think it's very important for fiscal policy to be countercyclical in both directions. When you have a shock, you must extend support. But when public debt levels are above 80% as they are, remember the combined fiscal deficit, center and states and PSUs last year, the center was at 4.8, states were at 3.2. That's 8% combined deficit. And then you've got the PSU. So you're looking at, somewhere around 8% combined deficit. That's a large deficit. India will need to preserve fiscal gunpowder for future shocks precisely because the world is so uncertain. So I would not recommend at this point that we go off the fiscal consolidation path, which has served us so well in the last few years. Can you tinker a few GST rates? If things have to be rationalized on a one-off basis, that's understandable. But generally, I think tinkering with tax rates, again, increases uncertainty. So I think some rationalization, is perhaps desirable, but I think constant tinkering will create another level of uncertainty that we want to avoid. So I think we have to accept the fact that fiscal policy doesn't have space. Monetary policy will have to do the heavy lifting. I think trade policy is important, and we have to go back to chipping away at structural reforms. Even in the rest of Asia, the fact is old growth models are now being challenged in the rest of Asia, manufacturing and exports. And so you have to find new growth drivers, which requires the harder slog of sustained, structural reform.
So therefore, my final question out here is that if there is not enough room and working with that assumption that the monetary policy is done, the bulk of the heavy lifting in the new RBI regime, if you will, and maybe some more left, but are we out of ammo and do we have to leave it to the cycle to fend for itself? Is that what is the way ahead?
I would not say that, Neeraj. I would not say that. I think the monetary policy has done a lot of the front loading. But remember, inflation over the next 6 months is tracking 100 basis points below the RBI's forecast. Right now, let's see if that sustains, because food price shocks are notoriously volatile. But if you do get inflation that's averaging, our forecast is 3.2% for this year. Then space for more monetary policy will open up later in the year. I think trade policy has a lot of things it can do to mitigate uncertainty. And structural reforms, the ammo is never exhausted. There's lots of ammo to use over there. So I think there are many instruments that policymakers have beyond the traditional fiscal policy that I think we should preserve for the future.